Hello and welcome back to Software Testing Studio. Today we are going to talk about Postman, which is an API testing tool. I'll briefly explain to you or give you an overview of the tool and talk about its main features, and then I'll show you an example. So, what is Postman? It is a powerful yet simple and intuitive API testing tool or application. It is used for backend testing, where we enter the endpoint URL, send a request to the server, and receive a response back from the server. It is used by the developers and automation engineers to ensure that the service is up and running along the build version of an API that is being deployed into the region. It essentially helps in hitting API endpoints by quickly creating requests as per the API specification and dissecting the various response parameters like the status code, headers, and the actual response body itself. What are the advantages of Postman? It's used for API development. It can be used for setting up mock endpoints for APIs that are still under development. It has very rich documentation suite. It uses assertions for the responses received from the API endpoints. This is quite important because we don't just check that the response is back we receive is correct, but we make sure that the data we receive is correct, the formatting is correct. And it integrates well with tools like Jenkins and TeamCity. And also, finally, it's obviously used for automating API tests. What are the prerequisites? Obviously, you need to install Postman, Newman, which also has NPM and Node, and Jenkins for continuous integration. Regarding the installation, there are two options. As a Chrome app, but this has already been deprecated, or as a native app for different platforms like Windows, Mac, OS, Linux, etc. The installation process is pretty straightforward. You simply need to double click on the downloaded installer and follow the instructions. What are the building blocks of Postman? So first we have collections. Collection is simply a series of saved Postman requests. It's a repository in which we can save all our requests. Generally, requests that hit the same API are kept in the same collection. The second building block is the request. The request is a combination of complete URL, which includes all parameters or keys, HTTP headers, body or payload. These attributes all together form a request. Postman lets you save your request, and this is a really good feature that allows you to use the same request as many times as you want. The third one is the environment. This is where all your operations on an API will take place, whether QA, Dev, UAT. Each project will already have regions configured, and you just have to declare your global variables such as URL, tokens, password, context keys, document keys, and so on. Positive versus negative testing. So when request results in a positive response, we get a 200 level response code. So this is a positive test we're looking for when we get the response, when the response is positive. Yes, so, but we also need to know what happens when the request is not formed correctly. Make sure that the API responds appropriately, and this is what we call negative testing. Examples of negative testings are a record is not found, a request is sent with missing required information, a value is sent with too many characters, a value is sent with invalid characters, You see, with negative testing, we deliberately input incorrect information so that we expect to get incorrect results. So, or we look for something that does not exist and the response back should be not found, for instance. So, so the test should pass in this instance. Another example is value sent that is not in the correct format. Now, assertions. So these requests that we've seen so far, we can convert them into actual tests, and this is done by using assertions scripts, and there are two types. Body assertion, we're looking for a value somewhere in the field, in the body, or JSON assertion, where we look for a specific field and validate that it's what you expect. We will look at an example momentarily and show you what we mean by assertions. So let's have a look now at an example so we can consolidate the knowledge and put theory into practice. So here, this is Postman IDE, and I've already installed it and configured it. Its installation is quite straightforward. So I have here a contact list API, which consists of two collections, and or this is a collection, actually, and these are requests. And what I've done, I've divided the request into positive, this should be called positive test, and negative test. So one thing to note is, obviously I've already mentioned this, so it makes sense to have a collection that tests the same endpoint, so they all targeting the same URL. So let's look at the first example. So within the request there are different types. There is the get, post, so we get all the lists. We can add a new list using the post method, or get a specific contact using the get method, or update the contact list, which is using the put, or use the delete type. Now, so the first one is we're gonna do is use, so here is the URL, here's the URL of the API we're gonna look at, and here we're just saying get me all the contact lists. So let's send the request, and let's have a look at the body. And as you can see here, this section of the Postman shows you all the results. There we go, in a JSON format. So we got the IDs, the name. So here, straightforward, I'm just saying get me all the contact list. Here we can use the post method to actually add another contact. Yes, so there are, let's send the requests. Here we go. So we've added this contact, so it's a new one called Holly Smith, and that. Here we want to get a specific contact. So this is where we're going to use. Let's get an ID. So we get the ID from here. So I want to get this NRAD last name S. So you append the ID to the URL link. Note this says something different. So get me that, and here we go. So we got NRAD S because I've changed the ID. There is the put request. So this is where we can update an existing contact. So let's pick this name. So Hannah White. So let's change the name to be, in fact, firstly, let's get this ID. So Hannah White, and see if we have that contact, because this is a public API we're connecting. So yeah, so Hannah White. So we're gonna go there and update that. So we've got the ID there. Let's change it to be Sarah Middleton, for instance. Okay, so the name Hannah White should change to Sarah Middleton. So we send the request, and let's go back and do the get contact. So notice it says Hannah White and the ID ends with B9. So if I do get, it should be updated here. So it has updated. Delete contacts, the same thing. We can with the same principle. So we just put the ID here, and that will delete the contact. Now, these are all positive tests. Let's look at negative tests. So we want to look for. We're going to send a request for an ID that does not exist, and we should get a page not found. And it should, yeah, that's correct. So this is expected. Yes, and so on and so forth. You can have all types. You can try to update an ID or a contact that does not exist, or add invalid characters. So there's different types of items. One thing I'd like to mention now, so let's talk about assertions, and let's look at the test bit. So this is where we're not only interested in getting the data back, we want to make sure that the data is in the correct format, for instance. So we use snippets here on the left side. This is how you get them. You just click on them and it copy the code, and you can edit it. So for instance, the first test we have is to make sure that we have status code 200. Okay, so making sure that the page does exist. The next one, we want to make sure that the email is correct. And the third one, we want to make sure that the content type is application JSON. So if we, when we do that, we get the test results here. And look here on the right, status 200 OK. And so status code 200 OK. Correct contact is returned. This refers to this assertion. And content type is application JSON, so that's passed. Now there is another assertion, but it's not included at the request level. I've included it at the collection level, so that it can be applied to all the corresponding requests under the same collection. We don't want to duplicate it numerous times, but also obviously because I want to make sure that the response is quicker, is less than 3 seconds or 3000 milliseconds. So that should apply to all the requests within the collection. So likewise, we have the test, yes, so it's here, and the root of the collection. So here I'm saying make sure the request is under 3000 seconds, so milliseconds, which is 3 seconds. So if the request takes longer than that, then is greater than 3 seconds, then it will fail. Let's put something unrealistic, maybe put 30 milliseconds and see if this will do it. So let's do that and send a request, and the test failed, obviously. So if you notice here, response time is less than assertion is below 3000. So it took just over 3 seconds. So it's below. So that's not realistic. So let's put that back to 3000 and save that and run that again. Hopefully it should pass if it takes less than 3 seconds, and that's correct. Next thing I'd like to quickly show you is the variables. If you noticed here, when I was updating this request, the email, I didn't put the email address. I've put a variable called email. We could do equally the same thing with the first name. So how do we do that? We go to the variables here and click edit, and you can see here it says email. So let's change that to be hello world 4, this is handy because instead of updating each request, for instance, you can just use a variable and just change it in one place rather than change it in multiple places. Let's save that and let's go back to the update. So Sarah Middleton, if we get that contact list and look at the body, get that specific contact. So here it says Sarah Middleton, and if you notice the email address is hello world 3. So I'm going to update it using the variable email that I've changed in the global variable. So it should change. So let's do that. And it was successful. So let's go back and do get contact. So notice it says hello world 3. If I update that, and it says hello world 4. So yes, so that's it for now. I just want to give you, obviously this is far from exhaustive, but I just want to give you insight and give you an overview of the capability of this powerful tool. I hope that you enjoyed this session as much as I enjoyed preparing it for you, and we'll see you in the next session.